Hello, friends. Welcome aboard the Round Trip Stories podcast, where we share stories of moving around the world and back again, reflecting on the lessons we've learned along the way. My name is Melissa.
And my name is Tracy, and we are excited to welcome you to this Round Trip Stories Third Culture Kids Advice episode. We learned so much from the guests on our podcast, and our two-season Third Culture Kid, or TCK series, has given us stories to ponder and enjoy. Remember that TCKs are those who spend part of their childhood growing up outside their passport country.
Our guests show the variety and diversity of the TCK experience. They come from 6 continents, and they are now in their 20s to 50s, and as adults, they have spent lots of time thinking about their TCK experiences. We can't wait for you to hear their combined recommendations. Flight crew, prepare for takeoff. Welcome, everybody, to our special end of our TCK series grand finale advice smorgasbord episode, where we're going to be reminiscing, listening back to the advice that our special TCK guests have given us over these last several months.
And there are 12 people who blessed us with their time and all of their wisdom and their stories in our Round Trip Stories podcast. And Melissa and I were just talking about how when we re-listened to all of their advice portions of their interviews, we really felt like it was listening to old friends and almost like a third culture kid reunion that we got to be a part of. And some of them are old friends of ours, but some of them we had just met. But having those really deep conversations with them, it brings you closer together. And so we hope that as you have been following us in listening to these Third Culture Kid episodes, that you will also feel the same connection to hear their voices again.
Yeah.
One of the things also that I loved is that everybody has a different accent because Third Culture Kids are from all over the world. And I love that we can hear their voices. And I've enjoyed that because it just shows the diversity of the Third Culture Kid experience.
Yes, I totally agree. And I love how they all had something different to offer. I think that's also a great example of how TCKs have so much that they share in common about their experiences, but then they also are each unique and bring their own gifts to their worlds that they are in.
Yes. Another thing I was thinking about how they were overseas for different reasons, right? Their families were in education or business, missions, diplomacy, and it's lovely to know their stories and know also how their third culture kid experience has enriched their lives and put them on a trajectory now.
Yeah, when I look right now at the list of people that we interviewed, we have at least 3 authors, several life coaches or some kind of coaches. We have three that do podcasting. We have a couple who work in churches, education. So it just goes to show the depth of wisdom that they are bringing to the places where they now live. It's amazing. And in case this happens to be the very first Round Trip Stories podcast episode you've ever listened to, we interview our guests, and then at the end of the interview, we always ask what their final word of encouragement or advice for our listeners is. And so what we've done in this episode is take their advice from all of these different interviews so we can listen to them all together at once.
Yeah, and of course, go back and listen to them because when we re-listen to things too, we get new meaning out of it.
Yep. All right. Well, let's do it.
Our first guest in our Third Culture Kid series was Tanya Crossman. She's a Third Culture Kid expert from Australia and is the director of research at TCK Training. She talks a bit about her time as a TCK in the U.S. and transitioned back to Australia, and then she shares about her research and writings, especially her book, Misunderstood, The Impact of Growing Up Overseas in the 21st Century. So Tanya Crossman unpacks what it means to be a third culture kid in episode 34. And then you can listen to Tanya share her research and recommendations for parents of TCKs in episode 35. So let's listen to Tanya's advice about resilience, TCK parents, and adult TCKs making their own way.
I think one of the biggest things for adult TCKs is we can often feel that we are victims to choices made for us. Because
Mhm.
when you're a kid, you don't have control over where your family is going to move and what school you're going to go to and all of these things. Even if your parents do take your opinions into account, they do make the final decision. Sometimes they don't even have much control because their business might be moving them around and things like that. Or their government might be moving
Mhm.
them. And so we can grow up with this sense of lack of control. And so it's really empowering as an adult TCK to stop and acknowledge that I get to make the choice now. So
Mhm.
unpacking what are my values, what do I want out of life, and I get to make choices to get there now. And sometimes we need to consciously unpack that and make those choices ourselves. So that's the first thing I think is really important. And another one I think is really helpful. Yeah, we were talking about creating home, but the same thing, like you get to make yourself feel comfortable where you are. Wherever you find yourself, you don't have to wait for it to feel like home. You can just go out and proactively make it your place,
Mhm.
no matter where you are. Again, you're in control. You get to choose how to interact with this place and
Mhm.
how to make a place comfortable, how to make your room, your house, your town yours, no matter how long you're going to be there. And that's true for adults and parents as well. You can be teaching those skills to kids at a young age. You can be teaching them how to make a place home and how to make it yours, even when
Yeah.
they're quite young. I talked a little bit last time about the fact that I had a hard time. I didn't like living overseas as a kid, and I wouldn't take it back. And that's the
Mm.
story I hear over and over and over again. It's part of who we are. Yes, there's difficulties, but that's how resilience is built. Resilience is built by going through hard things with support. When you
Mhm.
have a supportive adult walking through hard things with you so that you know, I can get through hard things and I have
Mhm.
support when life is difficult, that's what builds resilience. Now, the flip side is if you go through the hard things without that support, it leads to fragility, not resilience. It's not automatic.
Hmm.
But
Right.
going through the difficult parts of living overseas doesn't mean that it's a bad experience overall. And the majority of TCKs who live these lives are grateful and thankful for what they've gotten out of it. Doesn't mean it's all sunshine and roses. It can be really difficult
Yeah.
sometimes. And a lot of the research I work on shows those difficulties. But the reason I do the work I do is because I do believe that on balance, at the end, it is worth it. It's just a different path for most of us. We haven't seen a model of what this looks like, and so we need a bit of help to know how to
Mhm.
navigate it well, how to support our kids well, how to support ourselves well. Biggest thing coming out of TCK trainings research is that parents' mental health is the most important thing for their kids to do well. Parents need to be well supported in order for kids to
Mhm.
do well. So, yeah, it's definitely worth it. But
Yeah.
we need to make sure we look after ourselves as we go through the whole journey.
Our next TCK guest was Shireen Joseph. She is an adult third culture kid, a writer, a storyteller born in Tamil Nadu, India. Shireen grew up in the Sultanate of Oman and then moved back to India at 17 for university studies. Shireen later married and moved to the United States with her own family. In episode 36, you can listen to Shireen sharing about her idyllic childhood in the Middle East in the 1980s. And then you can listen to Shireen share her reflections on the freedom one experiences having grown up in many places in episode 37. Let's listen to Shireen's advice about being open to new experiences and people.
Yeah, I often tell my children to be open to new experiences, open to new people whom they meet. Be open to learning different things, even when they go back to India and they go back to their grandparents' homes. There's still new things which they can learn and meet new people. And so we, we try very hard to teach them to be open. So this is what I would say. Just be open to meeting new people who are different from you, who don't look like you, who don't talk like you, who maybe speak a different language. Be open to trying different things. I think we all run the risk of living in little bubbles of comfort.
Mhm.
I definitely do that because there are times I just want to, do what I want to do and be with the people that I want to be with. It's just
Yeah.
easier.
I mean, who doesn't like being comfortable? Like,
Yes, right?
right?
It's just easy, but
Yeah.
when you get the opportunity, whether it's at work or in your schools, in the communities, just be open to learning, asking questions, being curious. You don't have to be nosy, but you can be
Mm.
curious about other cultures and just asking good questions. We are increasingly living in a global world, and it is very good for us as followers of Christ to be open and always be willing to learn and to understand. It teaches us so much of compassion, and we follow a
Yeah.
God who is so compassionate.
Our third guest was Sam Fisher, an adult third culture kid who grew up in Indonesia and Malaysia as a missionary kid to a local Indonesian mom and American dad. Returning to the U.S. for college, Sam is now a bookseller and a dad of 4 in his 40s living near Boston, Massachusetts. Sam shares about his childhood in Indonesia and Malaysia as a TCK and that faith grounded him during many transitions in episode 38. Then in episode 39, Sam shares about his adjustment coming back to the US and how he realized that change is constant. Let's listen to Sam's advice about flexibility and global connectedness.
I think it's the importance of flexibility at the different situations and experiences that you face. Sometimes it's going to be overwhelming, and sometimes God goes ahead of you and prepares the friendships that you're going to make. Um,
Mm.
One of the things that I want to circle back to that I forgot was just the expanding horizon that you get from these experiences to know that, like I said about the World Communion Sunday, there's people who are part of this community of faith all over the world, and to know that we have that connection there that's deeper and it surpasses the cultural differences that we might have. I was talking with Rachel last night about it. I think I'm on my 7th passport now, and um, it's really important to have that when you're going to different places. But the the lens that I have is something that supersedes the passport of my passport country. It's the citizenship that I have as part of God's family, like in Philippians 3. And sometimes we can get tied up in knots about very specific things to our context. And I think um, just go visit with the friends in Peru or the friends in Wuhan and know that it's something
Mhm.
that the things that we're so emotional about is really not that important. Um, let's be part of God's work together.
Our fourth TCK guest was Shukura Babadier, a travel and nature lover and adult third culture kid from the United Kingdom. Shakura and her twin brother attended British schools in the United States and Singapore because their mom worked at their international British schools in those two countries. Shakura shares her stories about growing up as a Black TCK in the US and Singapore in episode 40, and then about her return to the UK and how she found her community through creating her own community in episode 41. Let's listen to Shakura's advice for TCKs to give themselves permission to feel the way they feel.
I guess encouragement is myself being a third culture kid is absolutely amazing. I wouldn't trade it for the world. Very grateful for that experience. So shout out to you, mum. But I think, but it can also be equally as isolating, and it's okay to have those feelings. So you're allowed to feel the way you feel. And if I'm
Yeah.
being honest, sounds really bad to say. If you're feeling angsty about, oh, I'm meant to be moving on somewhere, or identity, I don't know, or that, I'll be honest, that doesn't really go away. It sounds really bad. I wish I could say I've accepted that feeling doesn't go away, but it kind of mellows, it settles down.
Yeah.
Definitely from 2018 when I came to now, I've noticed my anxiety's a lot better. I feel a little bit more settled. And I found, coping mechanisms and strategies. It sounds really bad, but different
No.
things, like creating my own organization for other people, regardless of if you're a third culture kid, but you want to have that sense of community. So
Yeah.
that would be my encouragement and advice. Feel the way you feel. Most likely won't go away, but it'll get better with time.
Yeah. Good.
And read the book, Misunderstood. That's the biggest thing. Read that. For me, I kid you not, that sort of snapped and helped me transition back to the UK. I read it a bit, because I think I read it 2 years ago. So it was 3 years in. Because I was at that 3-year point and I was like, I should be, but I'm not. Seem to be climatizing. And then I read the book and then the rest is history. So, yeah.
Our fifth guest was Maya Talabard, a third culture kid from France who is a university business school student, artist, cheerleader, and travel lover. She spent 3 years in Korea and 3 years in China during her childhood before she returned to France for high school. In episode 43, Maya Talabard shared her stories about the freedom of growing up as a French TCK in Korea and China. And in episode 44, we can listen to Maya share about her return to France and how being a TCK continues to influence her life. Let's listen to Maya share her advice to parents that they should take a job abroad.
Well, if you're a parent and you have kids and you're working and you're considering going abroad, I say do it because it will be the best experience, whether it is for you, your family, or your kids. If you're worried about them adjusting, they will. They will find their place and it will really build their personality and their confidence. So it's just the best experience to gift them. And if, just like me, you are about to live abroad, just know that it will be the best experience of your life. You will always remember it, and you have to trust that it will be fine, even if it seems scary, and that readjusting back will be fine too, because it's a place that you grew up in and that when you come back won't have changed that much. And you will be able to find new ways to reconnect to that place. And so it will all, in the end, result in positive things and it will bring so much joy and so much memories. So I think it's the best thing that can happen to someone.
Our next TCK guest was Justin Lau, an adult third culture kid originally from Singapore who grew up in Japan and now works as a worship leader in London. Justin made the move to Japan at 3 months old and thrived in his international school community until he graduated at 17 years old. In episode 45, Justin shares his stories about growing up in Japan and how friends became an extended family. And then in episode 46, we listen to Justin share about his difficult return to Singapore and how he is now a bridge from east to west. Let's listen to Justin's advice about grounding in relationships and also place.
TCKs will always think about, wrestle, struggle with the concept of home and, grounding in physical locations. But the thing I will say is that people make a place. People make a home. For me, this was really grounding for me in my early 20s, where home is where those you love and those who love you are. And that can change, that can be flexible, that can be fluid, but it's not tied to a physical location. And so invest in those relationships because that's what really grounds you. But I do want to say for any TCKs listening, there is hope for grounding in a physical location. And it's taken me years, but I have got there, and I have found the place where I want to settle. I want to put down my roots in a way that I've never have wanted in the past.
Mhm.
And it's a learning journey. It's
Mm.
learning to do life with those around you day in and day out, no matter how messy it gets. But
Yeah.
there is that beauty of being able to ground yourself somewhere, but also with others.
Our seventh guest was Johnny Chin. He's a science teacher from San Francisco and Chinese American third culture kid who grew up in Beijing, China from the ages of 5 to 18. Johnny's dad was a public health doctor who worked for the World Health Organization. In episode 48, Johnny shares his stories about the relationships he made as a Chinese American TCK in Beijing and how they deepen his understanding of what's happening around the world. And in episode 49, we can listen to Johnny share about his return to the U.S. and tips on how to reflect and give back to others going through tough transitions. Let's listen to Johnny's advice about letting grief be a companion that grows us.
For me, grief is something that I've actually become really passionate about like the past 10 years of my life. And I think what really started me on that journey was leaving China and seeing grief as not an enemy, but actually as a
Yeah.
companion. And that even though the feelings of it feel really painful, it is a companion that is one to actually grow you and stretch you. And
Yeah.
my encouragement is to make space for the grieving. And that grief is able to coexist actually very well with joy. I
Yeah.
think Inside Out is a great movie to kind of incorporates that, right? But I also think that the capacity with which you're able to grieve will also be the capacity with which you're able to experience joy.
Absolutely.
And that the deeper you're able to experience the grief will also be the deeper you're able to experience the joy, both as you look back and have those moments of nostalgia, but also when you're in your new home. I think there
Mhm.
are times when you grieve, especially something as big as the loss of home, that it can feel like this vacuum and it can feel like you're falling. And the fear is like, if I keep grieving, like, will I ever be able to stop? Right. When in reality, it actually deepens you as a person. Yeah, I could go on about it, but I think, it's very much in line with what Paul states in Corinthians about, sorrowful yet always rejoicing. And I
Mhm.
think as an adult, I've grown to learn that these things that seem like opposites are actually in reality just in parts of the puzzle piece, and that it
Yeah.
rounds you as a person and also ends up rounding it as an experience.
TCK number 8 was Amy Burton, a life and mindset coach who grew up as a third culture kid in Spain. Amy now lives in Alaska and is a mother of 3. From the ages of 2 to 14, she was raised in ancient Madrid and then a brand new city called Tres Cantos as her parents planted a church there in the 1980s. Amy tells her stories about how home was wherever her family was in episode 50. Then in episode 51, Amy shares about her unexpected return to the US and the hard journey and healing that eventually followed. Let's listen to Amy's advice to be curious, ask good questions, and make relationships a key part of our lives.
Be curious. It's kind of a very life and mindset coach type of thing to say.
That's all right. That's all
But
right.
I think it serves everybody very well. Be curious, ask good questions. It goes for those who are third culture kids, but it also goes for those who interact with third culture kids. Um,
Mhm.
it's a great way to go through life. Being curious about what's happening around you, being curious about people's thought processes, and ask good questions. Um,
Mhm.
it continues and it fosters relationship. It fosters good communication. It fosters good conversation.
Mhm.
And amassing great quantities of things is great, but relationships are where it's at. My humble
Yeah,
opinion.
Well,
good.
Amy, we really appreciate your wisdom.
Thank you, Amy, for
Okay.
sharing your story. I know that parts of it have been really hard, but thank you for sharing with us some of the beauty and the redemption and
Yeah. God is good. Everybody has a story, right? Like
Mhm.
the beautiful parts and the hard parts and all in between. Like God meets you wherever you're at, right?
Mhm.
And do we
Mhm.
allow Him to do what He wants with that? Um, is the question. What
Yeah.
can He do? And um, can you learn to be resilient? Can you learn to, till the soil and grow something good out of it? Um,
Mhm.
but it's a
Yeah.
difficult choice because it requires a lot of work. But the alternative is to, bury it deep down and kind of get bitter about it. And that's not a great alternative, I don't think.
Our ninth guest was Major Ben Scott, a U.S. Army Signal Corps officer who grew up as a third culture kid in Kenya and Germany before returning to the United States for high school. In episode 52, Ben tells his stories about growing up in Kenya and Germany and how important the parent-child relationship is for TCKs. And in episode 53, we can listen to Ben share about his return to the U.S. as a teen and how he had to let go of some of his past to be in the present. Let's listen to Ben's advice about being patient with yourself and letting go of making people understand you.
Be patient with yourself. Be patient with yourself. Lean into your emotions, but also be willing to let go of trying to make people understand you. It's very, very
Mhm.
difficult, but,
Mhm.
embrace where you are today and grieve the pain of not being able to be understood completely or to connect with your third cultureness or the country that you left behind. Um, but be faithful for where God has you. I think that's the best. And I think people are going to be happier that way, but also I think that God's going to be able to use you in ways that you can't imagine because while learning to love that American who has never left his hometown in 50 years and you've been to 30 countries and have, seen the Mona Lisa 5 times or whatever. Um, you're going to be able to love them. Everyone has so much to offer, even the individuals that have never left their hometown.
Yeah.
I go back to, the church. I mean, because ultimately our home is with Christ, and we belong to the church, whether we're settled in one town or whether we move around a lot. And to love the individuals you're with, and God will bring about people in your life. I promise you, where you're going to be able to minister to them, where they're going to be
Mhm.
new, where they're going to be third culture kids, or they're going to be from a different country, and you're going to be able to minister to them in ways that you have never imagined.
Our 10th TCK guest was Ana Julia Borges, a Brazilian third culture kid who spent 7 years of her childhood in Uruguay. Ana Julia is a foodie, sociologist, and curriculum developer for TCK training. Ana Julia tells her stories about growing up in Uruguay and how she remained rooted in people in episode 54. And then in episode 55, we listen to Ana Julia share about her return to Brazil as a teen and how she realized that she was too complex for a category. Let's listen to Ana Julia's advice to go ahead and be a platypus that doesn't just fit into one box.
Sometimes we are really worried about fitting into the box of what does it mean to be a TCK, because we're like, oh,
Mm.
I feel seen. And now you kind of get stuck in a sense of, oh, this is what it means to be a TCK and I have to fit everything, because if I don't fit into this, maybe there is nowhere for me to fit. And I remember two
Mm.
different people who impacted me by saying something along the lines of, you don't need to fit into any kind of box.
Mm.
And the first one who said that was a missionary talking about how TCKs sometimes like to connect themselves to the chameleon because you kind of end up changing yourself. And then she was like, I want to invite you to be like the platypus, because the platypus is a creature of God and he's perfect just as he is, but he doesn't fit into a box. He fits into a lot of boxes. And maybe he's just navigating between them, and that's okay. And I was like, I want to be like the platypus. And then the second person was at TCK, and she was part of the team organizing the ITCKC conference in Chiang Mai last year. And during that conference, there was a lot of talks about what does it mean to be a TCK? How does that fit into people who are from the global south or people who are from countries who have a lot of CCKs? And I remember that she ended the conference and she just said, let's be too complex to categorize. So maybe instead of seeing it as something bad, that we are too complex, let's just embrace the feeling and just be ourselves, even if it means that we are different from TCKs. And just be like, each experience and each story is different. And we don't have to fit in the experience that the other has lived. So yeah, I think my invitation is for all of us TCKs to be too complex to categorize.
Our 11th guest was Marie Suazo, host of the podcast Talks with a TCK Friend and author of Tales of a Diplomat's Daughter. Originally from the Philippines, Marie grew up in South Korea and Egypt during her family's diplomatic assignments. In episode 56, Marie tells her stories about growing up in the diplomat community in Korea and Egypt. And in episode 57, we can listen to Marie share about her return to the Philippines as a young adult and making her own way. Let's listen to Marie's advice to give yourself permission to have a different understanding of the world than even your family.
I think the biggest thing that I've just been really sitting on lately is I think it was one of the forewords of one of Lauren Wells's book, but in one of them, they say that parents who put their kids through international schools or like this very mobile lifestyle somehow unintentionally alienates their child from their culture and from themselves. And I think that is one thing that made perfect sense to me, where I don't think my parents understood the cost of what it was going to be in order for me to like be separated from my culture. One thing I can say as an encouragement to listeners is that it's okay to have different understanding of the world from your family. There's nothing wrong with you. If you do have a different mindset, because you grew up abroad and have a very different relationship to certain countries, that's okay. You're not an alien. You have other people that are just like you that have difficulties, with cultural differences. And so just know that you're not alone. And if you want to talk and reach out, I'm here. Melissa and Tracy are here. And I'm sure they would love to just kind of make you feel like you're not alone.
Our 12th and final TCK guest is Amanda Bates, the founder and creative director of The Black Expat, a website for Black identity and international living. Amanda is also the host of the Global Chatter podcast and happens to be a third culture kid from the United States who spent her growing up years in Cameroon. In episode 58, Amanda shares about her layers of identity during her teen years in Cameroon. And then in episode 59, we listen to Amanda share about her return to the U.S. and her realization that Black identity cannot be put into a box. Let's listen to Amanda's advice about how being a TCK is not your only identity.
Whenever I talk to parents, I always go, I'm like the ghost of TCK Christmas future. Like, this can work out well. Like, I say a lot of scary things, but I'm like, also, this can work out really well. So I think, for parents, I'm like, you're not gonna mess your kids up. Your kids are gonna be fine. Talk through it, work through it, affirm folks, listen to the challenges, accept what you can accept and move forward. And I think for, younger TCKs, I'm like, it sorts itself out at some point. And I have to say this, I was like, being a TCK is not your full identity. And I think that's very hard, especially for the younger TCKs. And I've talked to college students who are trying to work stuff out. I'm like, saying you're a TCK doesn't necessarily tell anybody a whole lot about who you are. It talks about an experience that we can infer from. And so the important part is just that. You've had these experiences. What are you building upon that? And I think you've got to be careful when you just lean in on, I'm a TCK as an explanation for something, because being a TCK can't explain everything.
There's more to you than just that.
Right? So I think celebrate the experiences you've had, acknowledge, the good, the bad, and the in-between, but also understand that is a building block for whatever person you want to turn into and you want to be.
Again, we've loved listening to all of these advice snippets.
There's just so much wisdom that each of these guests shared in their full episodes with us.
Right. And all of our guests are several years away from their transition back, so they've had lots of time to reflect on it and to look back, and then they've gathered this wisdom, and just we're so thankful to share that with you as an encouragement, because that's what our podcast exists, is to encourage those who are just back in their transition, those who have been back for a while, and those who've never been overseas and want to know what it's like, because it is beautiful. Hard, but beautiful.
I have been noticing recently how having these conversations, both with TCKs and then also with the guests that we'll publish in the fall of this coming year, because we've already started interviewing people, they're going to be good. It reminds me how even though I am getting farther and farther away from my own overseas experience, that the lessons I learned and the lessons that I get to be reminded of as we have these conversations doesn't have to fade with time. Instead, it can age and develop just like fine
a good wine.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful thing. And so we always say, no matter where you are in your journey, we're glad that you're along with us. And that's partly because even if you are years and years away from your TCK growing up or your time overseas, that part of you can just get sweeter with time. It doesn't have to go away. And I'm just seeing ways that that experience for me is even still useful and beneficial in my everyday, in real life and relationships with people. And we hope and know that that can be the same for all of our listeners too.
Thanks for listening, friends. We hope this advice episode was a blessing to you, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.